Well, let's get more on this with William Lawrence, a professor of political science and international affairs at the American University. He joins us live now from Washington. Why is Zelensky embarking on this reshuffle? And is it a good moment to do that?
Yeah, because in Ukraine world, right, in the politics of Ukraine, there are firings and there are reshuffles, and there's been five firings since the war began, and those are quite dramatic and usually about big disagreements or someone giving information to the Russians, treason, those sorts of things. But there have been several reshuffles too, and what he does during the reshuffles is try to re-energize the cabinet. A lot of the people get similar, higher, different positions in the same reshuffle. There's this whole procedure where the parliament approves the resignations and then the reappointments to other positions. And so this is much more about sending signals to the world about probably a reorientation and strategy of some kind, rather than major disagreements. At least that's the reading I'm seeing in all the reporting here in Washington.
And what do we know yet? What do you think we should be expecting in terms of these new appointments or these reappointments, as you're putting it?
Well, the biggest question mark is Kuleba, of course, who you were talking about, who's well known in the West and really isn't been seen as a failure as far as we can tell from by Zelensky or anyone else. There's some defense reappointments. There's some other the civilian ministry reappointments or movings around. What's remarkable here is this is the biggest reshuffle since the beginning of the war, and it's about half the cabinet. And so to misuse a term, the Kremlinology of the interpretation will be who goes into what job and what does that signal. One of the biggest issues also here, according to the Ukrainian critics and people who follow politics close in Kyiv, is the questions about the concentration of power for Zelensky. In a healthy cabinet, in a healthy government, you have opposing points of views, alternate centers of power represented in the cabinet. That's why, for example, Kamala Harris has said she'll have Republicans in her administration like Obama did. So it'll be interesting to see, if Zelensky has put more like yes men in those positions, which would be alarming for some people, rather than a diversity of expertise and viewpoints.
And there have been concerns also about vacancies within some cabinet roles. Do you predict that those will be filled at this juncture?
Unclear. Again, if Zelensky's trying to give the impression that every position's filled, the Ukrainian government is strong, everything's just fine, and this reorientation has a lot of consensus behind it, yeah, that would probably be maybe a secondary concern. He would do it, but I think probably what's top of mind right now is having the right people in the right position before he goes to New York. And that's not just a visit to the United States. That's a visit to the whole world as over 190 members of the UN meet. It's craziness in Manhattan in mid and late September, and everyone will be there. So it's really an opportunity for Zelensky to show, all the good things that are going on from his perspective in Ukraine, the strong face they're putting, talk about the incursion into Russia and how they're holding the line elsewhere, and then look for more support with the massive bombing that's going on all over Ukraine, east, west, north, and south by the Russians right now.
You mentioned the concentration of power in Zelensky's hands, and clearly, he has been behind a lot of what's going on in Ukraine. I wonder how popular is he, would you say, within Ukraine and, of course, among the many Ukrainians who are abroad at this point?
I wish I'd looked at the latest polling data before this, but my sense is that his popularity has been dropping over the longer period, but he still has a huge base of support, and that's a patriotic position, because people still see the Russian incursions and war as an existential crisis for Ukraine, and so they'll stand with Zelensky, whatever criticisms they may have of him. Internationally, there are a lot of questions about the Russian incursion, all the threats of nuclear war and greater regional destabilization. A lot of global South and neutral countries would like to see a line drawn across Ukraine and a negotiated solution here, because the Ukraine war is bad for the world, including food security and other issues, an issue that Turkey knows very well. But I think that generally speaking in the West, generally speaking, in Ukraine, and generally speaking at the UN, he's going to receive a very warm reception. And he's still seen by a lot of people as a hero standing up against Russian aggression.
All right, William Lawrence from the American University in Washington, thank you so much for that analysis and insight. Really appreciate it.